love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, guys? Leyton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back with the Mexico breakdown. What an amazing card this is, and by that I don't mean there's really good matchups on this card. I mean this is just an amazing card to break down because it's a who the hell knows from top to bottom, so for that reason it will be interesting. As always, the giveaway is available. Follow the on-screen instructions. If you don't get it, come to the comments and I'll explain it. As for profit on the last card, very slight profit, but you always want to finish in the green, so I'm happy with that, but like 50-60 quid profit, so not the best. As always, I appreciate you guys and enjoy the breakdown.
And welcome to a very special episode of the UFC Gambling Addicts podcast, my episode 46 of the UFC Addicts podcast. My name is Aaron. As always, I'm here with my co-host Leyton, and we're here to break down allegedly a UFC card taking place this weekend in Mexico City. To be honest, not the best card on paper, but I don't believe they fight the cards on paper, so we're here to break it down anyways. I have a feeling there may be a few disagreements on this card, but anyways, before I turn it over to Leyton to talk about the last card here, UFC 46 main event, Vitor Belfort versus Randy Couture. Vitor won in 49 seconds. BJ Penn also fought Matt Hughes in, I believe, the first of their three bouts, beating him for the welterweight title by submission. So BJ has fallen a long way since then. I believe he's done the UFC at this point. But anyways, this was at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. The attendance was 8,700, under $1 million gate. So, wow. Yeah, a lot has changed in the sport of MMA, specifically the UFC. And I have been loving since they've signed with ESPN over here in the States. I think it's definitely increased the legitimacy in the product overall. But anyways, here's my co-host, Lynn. What up, buddy?
What's up, bro? So as always, I don't want to spend too long covering the last card, but there's always honorable mentions, so I'll go over a few. Lewis Smolka was my most confident pick, and he just blew Ryan McDonald out of the water. Hunter Azure versus Brad Katona was a very decent fight. It could have gone either way. Personally, I scored it very slightly to Katona, but I had Hunter Azure to see him get that 29-28. That was nice. Could have gone either way. Your switch to Sakai was perfect. I mean, Marcin Tybura with the back injury, and it wasn't even the back injury that lost him that fight. Sakai closed him down, and brutal.
Yeah, and I apologize hopefully it doesn't bother people that I switched some of my picks. I mean, I also switched to Cerrone, so that didn't turn out well, to skip ahead. But when I saw Tybura outweighing Sakai, Sakai used to have to really cut to 266 in his early fights in the UFC, so he came in much under that, physically looked the best he'd looked, and Tybura looked completely out of shape. He looked like he had trouble stepping on the scale. He literally, as he stepped on the scale, stretched out his back, and maybe I was looking for that after being aware of the back injury, but either way, that switch really, I'm glad I did it. And there again, I watched the weigh-ins, and I will make changes. It's one of the main reasons, in all honesty, I'm not huge on betting early in the week. A lot of people have all their bets up by Monday or so. I will make a few, but a big part of my process is definitely watching the weigh-ins. So
I don't think anyone will be annoyed that you switch, because the weigh-ins, just like you said, is a big telltale sign what will happen the next night. So you're spot on to change it. People always change midweek. Personally, I don't too much, but the weigh-ins, it's a perfect time to tell.
Yeah, it's always been part of my process. And then before I turn it back over to you, my favorite performance of the night was Glover Teixeira.
The poet.
Man, yeah, he is the poet. That is my nickname for him. That was absolutely a beautiful performance in there. And a lot of people may be like, split decision win, 29-28. What are you talking? What was so beautiful about that? First of all, I had a clear 29-28 for Glover. I felt he was advancing. I felt he was the one trying to pursue the action much more and having more success, controlling where the fight went. Overall, I think he did win the fight. It's fine to disagree. It was a close fight, but calling it a robbery, not even close. But Glover, he is 40 years old. When he came into UFC, he was training in like a garage or something with John Hackelman, I'm pretty sure. All he could do was hit hard. That's all anybody talked about with Glover, is how hard he hit. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous now, but he was called the like Brazilian Mike Tyson when he was coming over here. I remember this. And he was one-dimensional. And now everybody who is picking him pretty much had him by, including myself, if he won by submission. And he has become this well-rounded guy. His stand-up is still more than capable, but he knows he's not at a point in his career where he can trade shot for shot with people or where he needs to. Taking a lot of damage. Since that fight versus Gustafsson, he's looked like a different guy to me. And he is now at 40-plus years old, beating guys in their prime at 27 who've never been to a decision. And not only that, but, I mean, he made Krylov look passive. He made him, not pursue the finish in that. It's just I couldn't be more impressed. And special shout out to Glover Teixeira, a guy who, when he first came over to UFC, I was like, yeah, he's okay. And just as I see him more and more, and that's when I wish I would have switched, but I didn't. But I was happy to be wrong on that one. Super impressed. And you can just go ahead and touch on the main event, and then ready to, I guess, get into this UFC/Bellator card.
Well, one mention before the main event, we have to do it, and I know you've maybe forgotten Tristan Connolly. Connolly came out against a guy on short notice who you can just see the former steroid use. I've seen a meme on Facebook that says when you're trying to play a game and you don't know the buttons, and Michel Pereira's just doing these backflips and stuff. Like, Michel Pereira was just, he was always going to do that. I didn't know he was going to do the 6-minute Gangnam to the octagon, but Tristan Connolly, on short notice, I believe he earned over $100,000 on the night. Massive credit to anyone who took Tristan Connolly.
Thank you very much. I did put a bet down, much to your dismay when I said it. You were telling me that we were going to hear the bells for Connolly.
There are no bells, yes.
When I got plus 450, plus 425 odds on Connolly, I did a $20 holler. I'm not going to lie. And it paid off wonderfully. So nice. Pretty happy with that. And we'll see what Connolly does moving forward. Correia, if you look at his record, he's lost to a lot of guys he wasn't supposed to. And so, again, that style is very exciting to a lot of people, but it's stupid. So
it's a crazy unorthodox style. And when it works, it looks like his debut. When it doesn't work, you see the second and third round and you see Pereira on his back.
Yeah, exactly.
Main event, Donald Cerrone, 4 minutes 30. It looked like he was going to get into the second round. But you just have to hold your hands up and say credit to Justin Gaethje. Like, he found that shot towards the very end of the round. And yeah, just credit to Justin Gaethje. So Donald Cerrone,
three straight first round finishes.
In his post-fight interview, actually said, you told me earlier he said he wanted 13 more fights and he's still going to get the belt. So maybe a little bit of delusion setting in for Cerrone.
He wants to fight. He wants 50 UFC fights, and he's at 37 currently.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. So he argued the stoppage, and then he became super cool with losing. You said you liked that. I wasn't. I'm not crazy about it. I
just love the brotherhood.
There's a loss of hunger and edge to Cerrone that maybe it can work out, but then other times when you pick him and he doesn't win, and then he's just that okay with the loss, it makes it hard to pick him. But maybe that's just a little bitter gambling from me. So let's go ahead and jump into this card full of disagreements here. I have a feeling, and I apologize if I repeat a lot of my Dana White Contenders Series phrases throughout this card. I'm doing the best I can, but some of these guys I am just not sure of and don't know a lot of. And speaking of which, brings us into our first fight of the night at lightweight. And this is between Claudio Puelles and Marcos Mariano. I'll be breaking down El Nuno Claudio Puelles. And he is 8-2, 23-year-old 155er. 1 TKO, 5 submissions. He's 1-1 in the UFC, knee barring Felipe Silva back in May of 2018. And he lost his debut to Martin Bravo, who's fighting later on this card. Both of his fights in the UFC have been pretty competitive. Martin Bravo did finish him by TKO in round 2. And also Claudio's had a few withdrawals due to injury between those 2 fights as well. But he's only 23 still, so I think he could have shown a lot of improvement from his last time out. It's been over a year. Defensively is honestly where I want to see the most improvement, particularly. He's not shown too much of that so far. And his only way to really defend so far has been trying to get to his opponent to the mat like he did with Felipe Silva. But before that, he was getting caught. And also Silva got him to the mat even where it turned out to be a mistake. Puelles was able to sweep him. And I'm really not impressed with Mariano. He's one of the least impressive guys I've seen in the UFC in a while, and his record is there to match with it. Mariano's 6-5, and I think he goes to 500 after tonight. I think Puelles gets a sub in round 2. I think Mariano can Muay Thai him up and get a TKO in round 2 also, because I think that the 6'2" frame is going to be a huge advantage for Mariano, and it just all comes down to how aggressive Puelles is with the takedown. I anticipate he will be and have success, but I could see Mariano Muay Thaiing him up. I'll take Puelles by sub round number 2.
Fair play. Okay, Marcos Mariano comes into this fight 0-1 inside the UFC. He debuted against Lando Venata. Not really fair of a debut for a guy who was 6-4 as a pro. But for the moments the fight was standing, you know, he showed me a few things. But the problem is his takedown defense is, you know, pretty much terrible from what I saw in his debut. Yeah, non-existent. His ground game is non-existent. But like I said, this is MMA and it's not just grappling. So if somehow he has improved and is able to keep the fight on the feet, I do see him being able to score here. Claudio, you referred to his last fight against Silva. One of the best comebacks ever. One of the best comeback knee bars ever in the sport. He was getting badly beaten in that fight, and great comeback. So it's pretty clear to see if this fight's on the feet. I feel Marcos Mariano is gonna score effectively. I think if Claudio is able to get it to the mat, look out for a sub because that's what he's going to search for. So it's pretty clear to me. Claudio most likely wins this fight on the mat, and Mariano is, you know, he's looking to get a TKO. We're going to start the card with a disagreement here. I knew it. Marcos Mariano via TKO in round number 2.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. That's fair enough. I can't wait to see this new wrestling of Marcos Mariano to avoid going to 500 at 6-6. So, good luck. You do have the underdog, needless to say, which this is just ridiculous to see Puelles as a minus 250.
Yeah, plus 200 for Marcos. That is
plus 220 on Bovado.
Well, there you go. Hopefully, it rises a little bit.
I can't see Puelles getting shifted much more than 250. Although this is how bad Mariano's MMA game is. The Marcos Mariano's biggest advantage is that the fight starts standing, so it doesn't start in grappling. So Puelles does have to get inside of a 6'2" frame on Mariano, and I mean, Mariano, this would be Mariano's second finish ever. Does he even have a finish in his career?
I believe he has a couple.
I think he has one, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe.
But either way, like, he's not a finisher even outside the UFC. So fair play to you. I'm sure a TKO will be nice, juicy odds for you if you want to take a shot at that. But this is a card that I'm not going to have too much action on this weekend. I'm not betting on Puelles at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. But at plus 220, that is playing into a little bit why I'm going to take him. But a sub for Claudio wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think that a sub by Claudio seems to make the most sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But let's stop talking about this fight. Let's move on to an equally shitty fight between Bethe Correia and Sijara Sarge Eubanks. No, that was not really directed at Sijara. She's okay, I guess. But anyways, I will be breaking down Sijara Eubanks, the 34-year-old Sijara Eubanks, 5'3", 135, 4-3, 2 TKOs, 2-1 in the UFC. She's got a special place in my heart for beating Roxanne Modafferi. And she also beat Lauren Murphy, Lauren Murphy looked great her last time out, so that one looks a little better. She did lose her. Sijara did lose her last time out to Aspen Ladd by decision, and that was in a fight where Aspen was fainting before the fight. Also, so the last couple fights for Aspen, she's really struggled at 135. So for Sijara not to be able to take advantage of that, similarly to how Jermaine did, just I think should be a little noted here about Sijara in that win or that loss actually. But Sijara, she's looked competent. She looks a bit too small for 135, and she can't make 125. So she's just kind of a tweener here. She's got good boxing, decent grappling, and in a lot of ways, she really mirrors Bethe, but she's a little bit better, I think. And I do see this as kind of a coin flip. I've had a look at the odds. I don't exactly agree with the odds, but also this is one of my more confident picks of the night, mostly due to the opponent, but also due to the level of opponents that Sijara has faced these last couple times out and how she's looked against them. She didn't look terrible against Ladd. She didn't look great. And she looked really good against Lauren Murphy. And Lauren Murphy looked a lot better and tougher in her last fight. So I just don't have a way that Bethe at altitude wins this fight. I think that at this point, Bethe is fighting I don't know why she's fighting, but Chico agrees with me. And I'm going to go Sijara by decision.
Nice. Okay. Bethe Correia comes into this fight 4 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw inside the UFC. So last time she won was 2016. So she's potentially fighting for her job in this one. After she got head kicked by Holly Holm, she took 2 years off, came back and fought Irene Aldana. Looks, in all honesty, she looks pretty good in that fight. Arguably 2 rounds up, maybe 1-1 going into the 3rd round. But, she impressed me a little bit. It was a close fight against Irene. Heading into the 3rd round, her IQ, I don't know why she shot for a takedown.
She doesn't have an IQ.
Yeah, it was just a little questionable. I took Aldana that night and I was a little worried. It was a really decent performance against for Bethe. So last win, 2016, she's taken 2 years off. She has fought better competition. This is just, this is a pick'em, because if Sijara is able to be the aggressor here, then I see her being able to dominate pretty much. If she goes for that takedown like she did against Aspen, if she puts Bethe up against the fence, I see her running away with the fight. Yeah. But if it gets to that 2nd and 3rd round and she isn't the aggressor and Bethe is the one looking to, basically be the poet, be Glover Teixeira, then I see Bethe...
Bite your tongue.
I see Bethe being able to do it. I really do. So this one, once again, it comes down to whoever fights their fight. If Sijara is able to be the aggressor, then I see her winning. I did take her against Aspen Ladd, and I rewatched that fight like 3 hours ago. And, you know, it was a very close fight, but what lost her that fight was she wasn't walking forward. Aspen in the second and the third round was the one dictating it, and Aspen is a grappler, so if Sijara is the one walking forward here, I see her doing well. But if she falls into that same pattern in the second and third round, and she's trying to counter on the back foot, then it could get very tricky on the scorecards. Again, the odds are, I've seen the odds, they're pretty insane. So I'm going to take Bethe Correia to be able to save her job for one more fight and to win a decision.
I just think there's a few things you're not taking into account here. When has Bethe Correia fought as the aggressor?
All the time. She's the Pitbull. That's her nickname.
Right. But lately, when is she, like against Aldana, she had all the opportunities to be the aggressor throughout the fight, and she, as it moved on, got tired.
Yeah, but she was like, always the one walking forward. Aldana was always on the back foot. Even when
Aldana's always on her back foot. Aldana has two back feet.
The only time I remember Bethe being very not Bethe was against Holly Holm, and it was so weird because I think even Herb Dean said, "Ladies, you need to engage." Like they were both literally standing, just looking. She's
tried to be a counter striker. I've noticed as she's moved on in her career. I noticed the aggressiveness early on. Then she got knocked out by Ronda Rousey, and that aggressiveness has disappeared. She may still be called the Pitbull, but she is not a Pitbull in there, and has not been since being knocked out by Ronda Rousey. So yeah, well, right, exactly. But the Holly fight happened after the Ronda fight, and she had no aggression. That's my point. So, I mean,
she needs to be in this fight if she wants to save her job.
Yeah, I disagree pretty thoroughly in this one. And the odds are with Eubanks 240, 250. Again, 250, 220.
Crazy.
I'm not as outraged by it. I can understand that it's a little bit inflated, but it's not enough for me to shy away from putting Sijara in a parlay or two. I'll say
this before we move on.
I think that's just done. So
I'll say this before we move on. I do really respect Eubanks. You know, I took her against Aspen, and the path of victory you broke down, I do agree with. I think she has a good chance, but I just think this is one of those fights that it could you know just be a close fight. She impressed me against Aldana. I'd admit it.
Yeah, I was more not impressed by Aldana, but this being in Mexico City, Eubanks I think does have the better cardio at 35 especially. So agree to disagree on the first two. So you want to lead us into a very interesting fight, number 3.
Okay, we have Moreira versus Paul Craig. I literally messaged Paul Craig about an hour ago, you know, wishing him good luck for this fight. Very interesting fight. Paul Craig, 3 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. None of those 7 fights have gone the distance. He's a jiu-jitsu practitioner fighting a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I don't really know who would have the advantage on the feet. I'd assume Paul Craig would have the more effective, more quality of strikes. Maybe throwing quite a few calf kicks. He has thrown quite a few kicks up high and down low in his UFC career. Vinicius Moreira, you know, another guy, he's 0-2, potentially fighting for his job. You know, if you get finished or lose to Paul Craig and become 0-3, it's not looking good. So either loss here for either guy, it's not good. And it's hard to break this one down because Moreira is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. In both of his losses, he's looked for takedowns that haven't come. I do see grappling in this one because if these two guys weren't fighting each other, the game plan would be look for a takedown and look for a submission. So that most likely happens in this fight. There is going to be grappling too. But it's hard to say either guy can get a sub because actively they both look for that when they wouldn't be fighting each other. So I don't see much of an advantage on the ground or on the feet for either guy. But one thing that is notable here, we're fighting at altitude. We're fighting at 2,500 meters above sea level.
Oh, now it's notable. Now it's notable.
Moreira is a Brazilian. He fights 1,200 meters above sea level. Paul Craig is Scottish, and he fights 40 meters above sea level. So you could see Paul Craig fade quite a lot in this fight, and the sub come later in the fight. But you know, this is just one of those fights where you don't want to be the loser. If you're the loser here, your job is on the line massively. Having said that, I'm going to take my boy. I'm going to take Paul Craig to get his first TKO in his UFC career in round number 1.
Okay. So I've been doing a lot of thinking. You may have heard me go a couple times during your breakdown, like, oh my God, or like, oh, like, I don't know if it was out loud or not. It wasn't in response to what you were saying. I was literally making my decision on who I'm picking right now, and my decision has been made. And so here we go. I'll do my breakdown of Vinicius here, and then I'll go into why I'm making the choice I'm making. Vinicius Mamut Alves Moreira, 30 years old now, 205er, former heavyweight, 9-3 overall, 1 TKO, 8 submissions. Has a variety of submissions, including a second round triangle on Dana White's Contender Series against over John Allen, who came into UFC and got a win before failing the drug test. So against Rodriguez. So
yes,
yeah, I don't know a lot about Moreira's former opponents who are outside the UFC. Inside the UFC, he's reminded me of Bigfoot Silva, and not in a very good way, more with the plotting footwork and movement and trying to grapple, I guess. But I think that in this fight, he's going to look to do the same thing, try to make Paul carry his weight. I could see some sloppy stand-up. I do think Craig has the better stand-up. And the spot where I think Craig is far superior to Moreira is fight IQ. And that is where this fight is going to be won. Craig on the feet is going to be the more active of the two. And I think if it does go down, I think Craig's guard could snatch up a submission. I also think Craig could end up being the one controlling the grappling from the top. So I'm actually going to agree with you. I'm going to take Paul Craig. So I was taking Moreira. We talked before the podcast, and this was one of the picks who I thought, honestly, I thought more about it. The fight IQ is so squarely in the side of Paul Craig. And Paul Craig has shown me he knows how to win in the UFC. Moreira has not shown me anything close to knowing how to win in the UFC yet. So I'm actually going to agree with you. I think Craig is going to have the better stand-up, the better grappling, and the better conditioning.
Fair play. Okay.
I'm actually going to agree with you. I'm going to take Paul Craig. I'm going to take him to get a decision or even a late submission. I can't count that out, but I'll go decision if I have to make a pick. I'll take Paul Craig. And we get to the odds, and it opened with Vinicius as a favorite at -120. Some spots still have it -120. Bovada has it -125. So I have Craig at -105. So slight underdog for Craig. And if you can get Craig at plus money, I think against the guy who's 0-2, although a guy with decent jiu-jitsu, a guy who, with Moreira, he had to break Jonathan Allen's arm before he submitted him. So I'm not saying that makes him a terror, but Paul Craig is just a smarter, wilier guy who has shown he knows how to win the UFC. And I think he shows it again and gets his 4th win.
Well, I have him at plus 100. So maybe across the board by tomorrow or Thursday or whatever, we're going to have maybe Paul Craig plus 105. So Paul Craig, you know, this is one, like I said, this is one of those fights where you do not want to be the loser here.
And this is one that, you know, I'll put in 1 or 2 also. I don't feel as confident in as Sajara, but I think that Paul Craig as an underdog, I would jump on it.
Close odds. Okay, moving on into the 4th one. We have Sergio Pettis versus Tyson Nam, and I'll be breaking down the newcomer. Comes into this fight 18 wins, 9 losses as a pro. He's only been finished once in all of his fights, so pretty impressive there. and that was against Marlon Moraes, which was like 7 years ago. Since then, he's been racking up a few wins here and there. Decent power for a 125er, and that's probably because he's fought at 135 too. But for the most part, I just see this being a decent matchup for Sergio Pettis. Like, this guy just he's pretty patient, pretty composed on the feet, and he's looking to just, have a kickboxing battle. If he takes you down, he's not looking for a sub. He doesn't look like he's, trying to submit anyone. He's trying to posture up and ground and pound you. And when it's on the feet, he's just... It looks like a Sergio Pettis fight. So, not much of an insight for me on this one, but I do like Sergio Pettis as a fighter. I think him and his brother are both very good fighters. And yeah, I feel fairly okay taking Pettis here. I have seen the odds. I won't be touching that line at all. But I will take Sergio Pettis via decision.
Okay, I will be breaking down the 25-year-old Sergio Pettis. Fought his last few fights at 135, or at least his last fight at 135, and that did not go well. So back down to 125 he goes. 17-5 overall. Excuse me. His last two being at 125, or his last two losses being at 125, including to Formiga. And then he lost his most recent to Rob Font, where he made Font look like a giant. And Font just really looked good in that one. No disrespect to Font, but Pettis made him look pretty amazing. And Pettis kind of had a little bit of a purgatory at this point. That may be in part due to the purgatory of his division, but I don't know. But I'm sure he's not a 135er. And hopefully he's well adjusted being back down at 125 after the brief stint at bantamweight. If he can't beat Nam, I'm not sure who he can beat in the UFC at this point. At least towards the top of the divisions. Nam's been fighting decent competition, and having good luck against that competition. And I do think this is a close fight. But I think Pettis will just be a little bit quicker, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nam steals a decision. I don't have any confidence here, but I'll take Pettis by split decision.
Fair play. I mean, I agree with you. Like this card, you said it at the start of the podcast. It's one of those cards where you're looking at the matchups, and I'm enjoying this breakdown. I've enjoyed breaking down all of his fights so far, but. Even your picks, you're not confident in, and if you're making that pick, the person you're not picking, you wouldn't be confident in either. So it's one of those ones where this card, you don't really have a very confident pick. Maybe one or two, but for the most part of this card, there's even your picks. You're taking them, but there's not much confidence in the pick.
Yeah, and even through the first three fights, to say that through the first four fights, to say my most confident pick is Sijara Eubanks. That's crazy to me. And there's braver gamblers out there, and if you're gambling on this card, I'm putting all my research in as if I'm gambling on this card still. But I'll be honest, there's not a lot of spots here I see for me. So
it's a hard.
We can move on. And I'm going to, there's just so many choices for steak fight here. And speaking of which, let's move into the next of these steak fights. And this is at 115?
Correct.
Between Ariane Soresio Carnelossi versus, one of our favorites here, Angela Hill. I'll be breaking down Carnelossi. The 26-year-old 5'2", 115er, 12-1, 7 TKOs, UFC debut for her here. She appears to have a good amount of power on her feet, throwing a variety of different strikes, some takedowns at times as she kind of rushes in and bulldogs her way in there. It's basically a fight where the more well-rounded she fights here, the better to me. Hill's a vet. So she might expose the newcomer here. So I'll take Hill to surprise Ariane herself with a few takedowns and get a close decision. So I guess for Hill, she beats an inexperienced, smaller striker so far as you look at the wins she's had in the UFC. And in general, she tends to beat inexperienced, smaller strikers. And I think that's going to be a case here. And maybe Hill goes for a few takedowns to secure a uninspiring decision win.
Fair play. Okay, Angela Hill comes into this fight 4 wins, 7 losses inside the UFC. She's fought very, very, very good competition most of her career. The only problem there is she's lost to mainly all of the top competition she's fought. The most notable wins being Marina Moroz and Ashley Yoder. Obviously, you know, decent enough to be in the UFC, but not
small,
the best.
inexperienced strikers.
So, looking at this fight, once again, you can see a path for Angela Hill. It's just really hard to take it. But then you see her last fight, which was against Yan. Once again, she lost that fight. But, you know, she really showed me something in that fight. And what she showed me was she nearly caught Yan in a triangle. Now, if you look at Angela Hill's career, she's been needing to improve that grappling, the takedown defense, her own work off of her back for quite a few years. And to see her come so close to a triangle choke against Yan, it was pleasing. You know, I had Yan that night, and it had me scared. So to re-watch that fight and see Angela Hill come so close, you know, real improvements with the grappling. The striking, if this fight's striking, Angela Hill, I see her dancing around this girl. This girl is fairly lucky to be debuting. And, you know, I watched some of her tape and she just looks like a bad version of Jessica Andrade with no grappling. Like, it's hard here to bet against Angela Hill, but, you know, you made the comment before we got into this fight. Angela Hill isn't great. So it wouldn't be surprising if she loses, but
No.
I'll take Angela Hill via decision.
Yeah. And the odds, I like the odds for this. It's just sad when my favorite odds are for like an Angela Hill fight, but -140 for Angela, +110 for Carnelossi. I think to have it that close is kind of interesting. I mean, Carnelossi is 12-1, so she's impressive, but also Angela Hill has beaten girls like Liviana Souza to give her her first loss back in Invicta for a title. So I just think that, who knows though. And going into our next fight here at 145 between Kyle Monster Nelson, I believe is his nickname, and Marco Polo Reyes. So he'll definitely have the crowd on his side in this one because judging from the looks of Kyle the Monster Nelson, not Mexican, but he is 28 years old. He's Canadian, so he's a bald, pale, white Canadian, and he's 28 years old, 12-3 overall, 4 TKOs, 4 subs, so that's cool. 0-2 in the UFC, however, losing to Carlos Diego Correia on short notice, so no shame there. And he kind of had a back and forth with him before he got put out there, so didn't look bad. And then he had another back and forth war with Matt Sales, a guy who, in a lot of ways, I think he mirrored, but he lost in the 3rd round by submission. He was holding his own before getting stopped in the 2nd by Ferreira and the 3rd by Sales, so I can say that. And he's now fighting in his weight class again of 145 against a guy who I think he matches up with pretty well in Reyes. They're just going to look to stand and bang, and I think it's whoever's most durable may win in this one. I think that this will take place on the feet for the most part. And I think both guys have had pretty good luck in their stand-up, but Polo has looked less and less durable to me. So I think that I kind of question how much he's got left in the overall damage he's taken. So I'm going to take a second round TKO. I think either guy could get it, but I'm going to take the Canadian, and I'm going to take Kyle Nelson to get a round 2 TKO win, and definitely a much needed win for him.
Beautiful, beautiful breakdown. Polo Reyes comes into this fight 4 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. I rewatched all of his fights today, and this guy is he's brilliant. Every single one of this guy's fights is just fireworks. Something like devastating happens in this guy's fights. And then I got to the James Vick fight, or just a little bit after that, and it clicked. It clicked in my head. This guy is the off-brand Mexican version of Justin Gaethje. This guy will come and he will stand in front of you, and he's going to take your head off. And if he doesn't take your head off, you took his head off. That's the fight that's going to happen, no matter what. You go back and watch all of Polo Reyes' fights, and that's what happens. The only exception would be like Hadzovic, took him down in the second round and was able to get a TKO. But for the most part, if you fight Polo Reyes, you're going to have to take his head off, because if you don't, he's going to take your head off. That's just how this guy fights. So yeah, whoever put this match together has done perfect. Because you look at Kyle Nelson's debut, and he just came and threw heavy leather against Diego Ferreira, nearly finished him. Then he adrenaline dumped and got finished himself. So
Short notice, 6 days notice.
Exactly. So I think someone has seen that round, and they've seen Polo Reyes needs a fight, and that's what they're picturing here. The first round is just going to be, they are throwing heavy leather, and someone's head is getting taken off. You took Kyle Nelson. I have to do it. I'm going to take the off-brand Mexican Justin Gaethje. I'm going to take Polo Reyes to get a round 1 TKO.
Well, I think you're going to need it after being down 2-0. So I think this will be a much needed win if you get it, because those first 2 disagreements of yours, I'm not too sure.
This is a Bellator card.
Yeah,
come on.
I know. Hey, I know. And the odds, unfortunately, you get the underdog in this one, so you're going to get a little more juice on your bet. But Kyle Nelson minus 125 plus 1, even for Polo Reyes, so 100.
That's perfect. Kyle Nelson is going to take Reyes' head off, or Polo's going to take his head off.
I'm really surprised that they gave Nelson the favorite. I'll be honest.
I mean, your point about, Polo Reyes isn't that durable anymore. I mean, Drew Dober just a few months ago. It's going to be that fight. Kyle Nelson threw heavy leather against Diego, and that's what he's going to do here. Either Polo goes down or Kyle goes down, but this is going to be great. Literally. Yeah. I love that fight.
I think that's on this sad card that is the UFC in Mexico City, that is a potential play of the night. So moving us on, let's move us on to the next one here. It is a fight at 130 at bantamweight between Carlos Pereiro Malo Huachin and Jose Quinones. I will be breaking down I'll be breaking down Carlos Huachin. It's Jose Alberto Quinones. I knew I was forgetting a part of that. So Carlos Huachin, 22 years old, 5'7", 135er, 10-4-1, 8 TKOs, 2 submissions in his 10 wins. 0-1, losing on short notice to Raoni Barcelos. I think he showed a pretty good game and was tough in there. I've watched some of his other recent fights, and he's definitely a bit of a brawler in there. He's going to come forward and try to finish you quickly. All of his 10 wins have come in the first round, and he's pretty much, if he's exiting the first, he's lost. So it's not the best thing in the world there. He'll definitely take some, give some back. I've been impressed with his record, but I also find it to be a red flag. And I think Quinones knows exactly what the key may be. And that's taking him into the second round and beyond into places where Carlos has never been successful. And at altitude, Quinones being the hometown fighter here and the more well-rounded guy. I think anything beyond round one, this goes to Quinones. So I'll take Quinones by decision, but I'd love to see a Huachin first round KO or something like that. I would love to see it, but I think I'm going to take the hometown guy Quinones by decision.
Fair play. Okay, Jose Quinones comes into this fight 4 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. I was at his last fight, which was in London against Nathaniel Wood. The pressure, the grappling and wrestling advantage for Nathaniel Wood was just too much. The best way to describe Quinones as a fighter, he's like a toe bouncer who fires like 25, 30 plus kicks around. Like 85% of his striking is kicks. Like he's just going to throw body kicks, high kicks, low kicks, just constantly throughout the whole round. Kicks are coming your way. So you look at his last fight against Nathaniel Wood, and you ask the question, well, how does that type of guy lose? It's pretty obvious. You take away the space, and you stop that side of his game. So Carlos is a pressure fighter who had a very tough debut against Raoni Barcelos, a guy who was looking for a takedown, did get a takedown. So Carlos was on the back foot a little bit, scared of that takedown. Jose Quinones, once again, fighting his fight against Nathaniel Wood, trying to move a lot and kick a lot because he was also scared of the takedown. I'm not really... I would assume Quinones would be the one in this fight to take it to the mat. But for the most part, I see him being Quinones on the feet. I see him, toe bouncing around the octagon and firing kicks. But Carlos, also impressed me in his debut. I know we both picked Raoni, I believe. But he impressed me, he's got some power on the feet. And if he can constantly stand on Quinones' lead leg and just take away that space, I think he is able to land a big shot. But that's, most importantly, standing on his lead foot would be taking away his main game, his kicks. So if Carlos can do that for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, he could do enough to win the fight. So I'm going to take Carlos Huachin via decision.
Yeah, I respect the pick. It's hard for me to pick it before I see him do it. When he's been beyond the first round, he's lost. So, it's one of these things when I see these guys with decent records, but all their finishes are in the first round. It's, well, who are you fighting and what are you doing when you face some adversity? And he's definitely not going to have the crowd on his side. We'll see about how the judging is that night as well. So, fair disagreement, I think, was our fourth.
Yes, it is.
And Carlos Huachin, again, you have the underdog in the disagreement here. Plus 130 or plus 120, was plus 120, minus 150 for Quinones. I was expecting it to be a little more towards Quinones, but fair enough. I don't mind taking Quinones, but wouldn't shock me to see Huachin win, and I think it's same for you, vice versa. So
it's a very close fight, very close odds. Just to go back to a quick point you made with the he's got all of his finishes in the first round. That's a legit point. If you're entering the UFC or your second fight in the UFC, you want to be like a Tyson Nam. 18 wins, 9 losses. He's seen more than Huachin. So, but that's another reason why I'm not going to touch Sergio Pettis' line. Like he has a horrible line, and that's a close fight. Sorry to get off track a little bit though.
No, it's okay. But there's a reason Nan's record isn't 29-1 or something. He's faced some real good guys. He's also not just faced some real good guys, but beat a lot of good guys. He's lost to some of them too. He's learned how to come back from losses, and he's also the adversity is not a bad thing, especially early on, because you're going to face an O at some point in your career. And if it comes late, it kind of makes you crumble maybe. But if it can come early in lower stakes where less eyes are on you, maybe you learn more. It's easier said than done. But speaking of close fights and fights with a lot of losses between them, we're on to our next fight here. And one side has a 17-9 record, and that's Steven Ocho Peterson facing off against Martin Toro Bravo. And I will be breaking down, I believe, Steven Ocho Peterson, 5'9", 29-year-old 145er fighting out of Fortis MMA. And I can guarantee you this guy is a fantastic training partner to have there. So while it hasn't always translated in the UFC yet into wins, he's 1-3 so far in the UFC. This guy is a guy who always comes forward. He's going to make you work. He doesn't have the skill to match his will, unfortunately, in my opinion, at least. If he did, he'd be one of the best guys in the UFC. So he's not, and he's not. So 17-9 overall, 3 TKOs, 4 submissions. I'm not really sure what else I can really say other than push forward, aggressiveness, and he's just been a little outgunned at points, both physically and from a tactics perspective, which is surprising coming from Fortis. But, again, it may not make sense here, but this is the kind of guy that Steven Peterson beats. He's going to be in the better rhythm with regards to his fight rhythm overall. He's fought more often, and he's been more active, and he's more active in his fights. And I look for him to keep this on the feet, and I think Peterson's going to push the pace and push him to defense at times. And I'm going to take another decision, but I'm going to take Steven Peterson to get it. Dirty, grindy decision for Steven Peterson.
Fair play. Okay, Martin Bravo comes into this fight 1 win, 2 losses inside the UFC. I'm not really too sure what this guy is like great at or supposed to be good at. But one thing I did kind of pick up on in his losses and his wins, and the wins before the UFC, is this guy's just, he's always there. He's always going. Like, even if he's losing, he's the one coming forward, and he's just making you work. He has 3 submission wins.
Sounds a lot like Steven Peterson.
Exactly. He has 3 submission wins, but they're against guys who have pretty bad records. But this guy's just he's just looking to walk you down and take your shots to give a shot. But after that, he's still there doing the same thing. It's just non-stop coming forward kind of thing. He was TKO'd and finished very quickly against Bandane, against Alex Caceres, badly tagged in that fight at 1.2. So this is one of those fights where, Steven Peterson loves this type of fight. That's what he's trying to do in all of his fights. Martin Bravo he's had about 14, 15 months off of the sport. So maybe, your point with Steven Peterson being more active, he could be quicker to the punch. But I go back to my comments before, the altitude. Martin Bravo has fought his whole career at 2,500 meters. And Steven Peterson's fighting at something like 200 meters, I believe I saw. So Peterson gasses. He gasses in his fights. So to say he wouldn't gas outside of round 1 against a guy who just keeps coming forward, I'd be deluded to say he wouldn't. I do see him slowing down. So the best chance of Steven Peterson would be round 1. And that's why I'm going to take Steven Peterson. Your point about activity, I just think Steven Peterson, he's so tough. He's tough as nails, and he wants this. So I think his best chance is go for broke. Go for broke in round 1, and try and stop this guy. Because after round 1, I wouldn't be too confident in Steven Peterson. So I'm going to take a round 1 TKO for Steven Peterson. Put some faith into him.
All right. Fair enough. We disagree on the method here, but at least we agree on a fight for once. So Steven Peterson, it's a straight pick 'em, and minus 115 each way. I think that's totally fair.
Totally fair, mate. They fight the same fight. And yeah, they're basically the same guy. One's Mexican, one's American.
Yep, fair enough. And this leads us on to another steak fight here, and it is between Vanessa Missampatia Melo. So I'll just call her Vanessa Melo from here on out versus Irene Aldana. And I'll be breaking down the newcomer, the 31-year-old Vanessa Melo, 10-5 overall. She has won 5 straight. She has 2 submissions in her career. It was very hard to find tape on her. She's gone to a decision quite a bit, kind of some plodding footwork, average striking. I don't see that being able to get it done here. She wants it on the ground. I would think Aldana has a far superior game there. And if she does get her there, I think could even get her out of there more than Melo could get her out. So I look for Aldana to finish this inside 2 rounds with her boxing. If this goes to a decision for Aldana, I would be a little bit disappointed. But I expect to be disappointed in this fight, so I'll take Aldana by decision.
Irene Aldana comes into this fight 3 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. She's coming off of a split decision loss against Raquel Pennington. I took her in that fight, and she was right to lose that fight. She was right to lose a close decision, and the reason she lost that was because she spent over 2 minutes going for a calf slicer in the 3rd round, so being totally ineffective for the 3rd round, the deciding round. So IQ wasn't great there. For the most part, you know, she's a long, rangy striker who throws a lot of jabs that hits the air. You know, when it connects, it looks nice, it looks decent, but for the most part, it hits the air. That, you know, it's not great that you see all these strikes just missing, but at the same time, it's hard for the opponent, because if the opponent isn't scoring, already they're fighting Irene's fight. And that's what's so tricky about Irene. You know, she's not the greatest, but the way she just pops that jab out there is so hard to work around. And then she implements the kicks. She's just a very tricky girl to prepare for. And what I've seen out of Vanessa on tape, just it hasn't impressed me too much. So yeah, this would be my most confident pick. And that says everything you need to know about this card. You know, Irene Aldana is my most confident. And just like you, I most likely expect to be disappointed slightly. So I'm going to take Irene Aldana via decision.
Yeah, and she's a minus 500 favorite, plus 380 for Vanessa Melo. I may do just not even a $20 holler. I may do a $10 holler on Vanessa Melo, depending on how high that gets. Because I'm not betting on Aldana, and if I lose $10, I'm happy to donate it. Bovada has paid me way more than I paid it this year, so I'm happy to put $10 into a machine there, take a shot.
It's always fair to donate. Always, every now and then, you have to.
Melo could steal it. Aldana has found ways to snatch victory from the jaws of, snatch a defeat from the jaws of victory. So,
but you are taking Aldana.
I am taking Aldana, but if I was betting on somebody hypothetically, I would be betting on Melo.
Okay.
If I was betting. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm not betting on Aldana at minus 500 any day of the week. Yeah. That's just not happening.
I don't feel like I should say leave the price, but for anyone who was wondering, should they bet on Aldana? No.
Yeah. If we have to answer that, then yeah. In my opinion. But if you feel that, I mean, she is your most confident, so it does make sense for her to be the heaviest favorite, playing devil's advocate. But no one on this card should be a minus 500. So, especially not Bethe Correia. I don't know why I decided to call her out. But you want to lead us into the next one?
Yes, this is a very decent fight. We have Askarov versus Brandon, the assassin baby Moreno. And I'll be breaking down the Russian. Comes into this fight 10-0 as a pro. He's making his debut. And from the tape I've seen, honestly, this guy has impressed me. I believe he has 6 submission wins, 3 TKOs. And after his 3rd professional fight, he had only fought against guys who are more experienced. You know, he fought against a guy like 37 wins, 5 losses. He's fought against, people more experienced basically from the get-go. And his technique for a guy who's just 10-0 really stood out to me. The way he's sinking in these chokes, some of his strikes on the feet, just in the pocket, really, really impressed me. So he's fighting a guy we know in Brandon Moreno, quite unorthodox, a little bit tricky, throws these weird kicks, could submit you, could take you down. We know about Brandon, he's going to come with a unorthodox style against this guy. And honestly, it's a pick'em. It's a pick'em in all honesty. One thing I will say, Brandon Moreno being Mexican, he will be having trouble in this fight too, because he's from Tijuana, which is right near the sea. So to say he's going to have the advantage because he's Mexican, that's wrong. He will be fighting in unfamiliar, sea level. So same with Askar. It's a hard one. It's a hard one to break down. But for the most part, I like Askar's technique. So I feel he's able to score more in this fight. So I'll take Askarov via decision.
All right, I will be breaking down Brendan, the Assassin Baby Moreno. 25 years old, 5'7", 125er, 15-5. He was 3-2 in his first go around in the UFC. He did get cut. He took a few grappling bouts, which he won. He also had a fight in LFA that he won by 4th round TKO, where he rocked him on the feet, led to ground and pound, and the finish by the Assassin Baby. He's a really good grappler, and he gives and takes on the feet. He's definitely aggressive on the feet. I wasn't as familiar with Askarov, but he seems like a very well-rounded technical guy with a good gas tank as well. I do think this could be a 3-round war, so I think both guys have the ability to finish, but I think it could go to decision. I'll take the newcomer to go to his first decision here and win it. So we're talking a little bit out of both sides of my mouth with the earlier fight where I said I wasn't taking Hauchin to win decision. I find Askarov, from what I've seen and what I've been able to research, to be a little more technical and able to do it here. So I do think Moreno has a crowd behind him, and I do think that if it's a close decision, him being the more aggressive guy and more forward-coming guy could end up coming into play. So a Moreno, again, I'm a broken record here, but a Moreno win would by no means shock me, but I'll take Askarov by decision. So we're going to agree here. Askarov is the favorite at -170, +140 for Moreno. I don't think I can really bet on that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a little bit closer because Brandon Moreno, he's fairly decent, man. He's got some good wins. He's a good grappler, like you said. He's fighting in his hometown in Mexico, so Brandon Moreno that's a decent price for anyone who likes Brandon Moreno there.
Yeah,
+153 at Sportbet as well. So if you're at Sportbet and you like Brandon Moreno, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree, and that is, I mean, this card, I think I'm just going to leave most of my picks because if I start switching picks, I'm going to switch all of them. So I think I may just leave it and just go with who I pick here today. I'm leaving, and it's not going to be a super active betting weekend for me with regards to these fights. So hopefully they're good. Hopefully they're good fights, and they don't get any easier here. We're moving into our co-main event of the evening somehow.
Wow.
Yeah. If this was a co-main event of an Invicta card, I didn't understand, but this is a UFC. Alexa Grasso versus Carla Esparza. I'll be breaking down Alexa Grasso, also known as better-looking Irene Aldana. 11-2 overall, 4 TKOs. 3-2 in the UFC, fighting in the co-main event. Sure, why not? She did beat Kovacevic and Randa Marcos and Heather Clark. She's also lost to Felice Herrig, and she got ran through in a round by Tatiana. So that's Tatiana Suarez, future 4-division champ. I still believe that, although less so than last fight against Askarov. But good news for Grasso is that she's never going to have to face Suarez again. So that's good. And she has a more interesting matchup with a grappler in Esparza here, who I'm kind of just unsure where her head is at, but she did look good against Berna Jandiroba. So that was an impressive win by Esparza. She's started to look a little more well-rounded as she's gone too. Grasso has very good boxing, not much power. Sometimes is on her back foot quite a bit, kind of like a fighter that we talked about earlier. And it's the other aspects of the game for Grasso where she's a little weaker. I do think this is a winnable fight for whichever fighter is first, but I anticipate first using their strengths. But I anticipate Carla is going to be grappling enough to control Grasso, and I think that Grasso is going to be a little more focused and hungry coming off a loss and looking to hit her rhythm, but I think the grappler gets her again here, and I do think that Carla wins a decision. So going to take another decision. I'm taking a lot of decisions tonight, and I got Carla Esparza by decision.
Fair play. Okay, Carla Esparza comes into this fight 5 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. You could say she's a veteran of women's MMA. She's fought very, very, very good competition like her whole career. And we know who this girl is. You know, she's primarily a grappler. She's a wrestler. She's looking to shoot in on a double or a single. And if she can get you down, you know, she's very heavy on top. And, you know, that's how you're going to fight a Carla fight. You know, if you get taken down, you're in a Carla fight. Alexa Grasso, in her last fight, just really impressed me against Carolina. Her boxing was just some of the best I've ever seen out of her. Just crisp. Carolina did, you know, she just kind of stood there and didn't do much. She was just not there. Like, something about Carolina.
She's been on a downward slope, man.
It didn't look right. So I'm not reading too much into Alexa here, but you know, her performance was very good. Her boxing was crisp. In the clinch, she looked pretty strong, so maybe Carla's going to have to work a little bit here for a takedown, but she's very explosive. When she shoots in on a double, very explosive. Just the shot alone is so explosive that the takedown just comes. So Carla, you know, you're picturing Carla's type of fight where she looks for a takedown. But if this is on the feet, man, I think that boxing from Alexa is just going to be scored. Having said that, you mentioned Carla has evolved, and she really has. She rocked Claudia. She hung in there with Cynthia Calvillo on the feet and looked very good. So Carla, you know, she's not a bum on the feet. She's not just clinch. She can strike, but maybe she doesn't fall too much, you know, for the striking and sticks to what, you know, Carla's good at. But I'm going to take the Mexican here. I'm going to take Alexa Grasso to keep it on the feet, work that jab, and nick a close decision.
Okay. So that is how many disagreements now?
That's 5.
5. All right. I think that's what I predicted before this. So Alexa Grasso is the favorite. So finally, you get a favorite on one of these disagreements. Minus 125, Carla minus 105. So
I'll say this. I'm not happy that my favorites fell with a female fight with you, because you seem to nail female fights.
I think I'm undefeated in low-level women's MMA, even though this is the co-main event, and this is a decent fight. I didn't mean to be that disrespectful of it. But
how annoyed will you be if your record stops with Bethe Correia?
I mean, I'm not going to consider that, because I think that's one of your worst picks since Shamil Abdurakhimov.
What did I say before the podcast? That's my Julian Rosa pick, like that you made last season.
I did pick Julian Rosa against whoever that was. What was it? Arce, Julia Arce.
That
A
pick
guy who I
was so
always pick
bad.
against.
Someone needed closure in the comments. So maybe someone's going to need closure from me with the Bethe pick.
I mean, yeah, you picked Bethe. Your first two picks of the night. That parlay should be nice and juicy with Mariano,
I would
Correia.
never put them together.
I mean, good luck with that. So this moves us on to the main event of the evening. So far, we are 2-4 in main events, both of us. So not the best start, but for me, a much better start than last season. And I am currently up 1 in the standings. So it should shift a little bit after this week, but I see it maybe being even after this week. I'm hoping there's not a 4-1, 5-0 type swing, but it is what it is, and it's early in the season. So
we got like 40 more.
Yeah, we got a great main event here, and it is between Yair Alcantara Rodriguez and Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens. And I will be breaking down Yair, who, as we've been doing this breakdown, I've been going back and forth, watching on mute Jeremy Stevens, Yair fights in the background as we've been going here. So hopefully subconsciously this helps me make a better pick, because I'm not going to lie to you, I've been going back and forth on this one. And I will be breaking down Yair, the 26-year-old featherweight, 11-2 overall, 7-1 in the UFC, coming off backwards, upward elbow at the buzzer against Korean Zombie in a Fight of the Year candidate. And in a fight I think he was barely losing, but doesn't matter. He got the knockout. So Yair really did get exposed and humbled by Edgar. But other than that, he's looked very impressive in the UFC. I think this is a great stand-up battle here. And there's not much else to break down with regards to Yair. He's a great kicker. He's worked on his boxing a lot more, and he's evolved with the elbows, and he's just overall an elite striker. And when he has someone willing to dance with him or not, he's done really well. So, I mean, his only loss, again, was that beatdown against Edgar. He took a lot of time off after it, and he's appeared to get better from the loss. So, but Stevens, he's fought everybody. He's pulled off some crazy upsets, and so I think counting him out would be pretty crazy in this one too. And I think that beating Yair in Mexico City is going to be a super tall task. I think one of the biggest differences between these two guys, other than their styles, is that the extremely good cardio that Yair has. That fight against Korean Zombie, he came in on under a week's notice, I believe, or maybe just over a week's notice. And he fought every bit of 5 rounds and didn't slow down. And it's just to not have a full camp and still have that level of cardio, preparing for this camp also. I get it. He trains in Illinois, so he's not at high altitude. And I understand all that. Yair appears to be a guy who just stays in good shape, and the way he fights isn't a detriment with his shape. That being said, Stevens has, I think, an underrated gas tank for how he fights. He has finishes in the first, he has finishes in the second, finishes in the third. So he does maintain his power, and I think if he continues to, or even if he doesn't continue, but if he cracks Yair, I completely see him putting him away. So I've been going back and forth on this one. But I think while Yair really has a chance to put on a kickboxing clinic, there's just something about me just telling me to pick Stevens. I think that the power and his ability to cut off the octagon, while Yair has the flashy, standout, quick movement, I think that Stevens has more tactical movement than he gets credit for. And I see his power catching Yair within the first 3 rounds. So I'll say a round 2 TKO for Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens.
Lovely breakdown. I love that main event breakdown from you there. So I'm gonna start with replying to your mention of the Yair versus Korean Zombie. That was an amazing fight. 25th year anniversary, amazing fight. And I barely had Yair winning up into that TKO, and you had him barely losing. So that summarizes how great that fight was.
Excellent.
So, Jeremy Stephens, he comes into this fight with a whopping record of 15 wins, 15 losses inside the UFC. He's a former lightweight turned into a featherweight, and we know who Jeremy Stephens is. You know, he's looking to get in front of your face and land a heavy strike. You basically said Yair Rodriguez is an elite striker. Well, Jeremy Stephens is an elite brawler. So this fight we have here, this matchup, it's so interesting to break down because Yair Rodriguez, like you said, he is a great kicker, but Jeremy Stephens is a great brawler. So it's one or the other here. I give Jeremy Stephens the probability inside the first two. Just like I said, I felt Donald Cerrone would take over if it hit the third round. I think if Yair hits the third round here, it's going to be his fight to lose. I think he's able to land a lot of elite kicks, like you said. So if he gets to that third, fourth, and fifth, Yair basically, in my mind, can run away with this fight. Now, the problem is that first 10 minutes is very hard because Jeremy Stephens is an elite brawler. And he has been training with like Tony Ferguson. He's been running a lot with Tony Ferguson. And, you know, he's had 30 fights in the UFC. This guy has a win over RDA. He's fought Donald Cerrone. He's fought everyone. And surprisingly, just in 30 fights, Jeremy Stephens has been finished twice to TKO strikes. Like in 30 fights, that's how tough this guy is. So it's really hard. It's really hard to make a pick because I took Yair against Zombie, and to see him finish like that, to see the performance he put on, it was very special. But Jeremy Stephens, man, I'm a true believer in this guy. I really like that this guy is just tough as nails. He's looking to close the distance and land a horrible, devastating overhand or a hook or an uppercut. He's just looking to take your head off. A good mention from you would be, you know, both guys are going to be fighting at altitude. Yair is from Illinois. He is training there too. So this is a really, really tough main event. But we're going to agree. I'm going to take Jeremy Stephens here. And I'm going to take him just like you. I'm going to take him to get that round 2 TKO.
Yeah, I think that for how Stephens fights, he has better cardio than a lot of people will realize. And yeah, I just think, again, Yair has done a good job of not rushing himself back after the Edgar fight, but he may be a little too passive for my liking with the amount of times he takes fights. And Stephens is going to be hungry as always. So go to the odds, and these are the kind of odds I like for a main event. -120 for Yair, -110 for Jeremy.
It's perfect. It's spot on. It resembles the matchup.
Exactly. So, yeah, this is one of the many reasons I love doing this breakdown. As I break down this card, look into it a little more, there's certain fights that are complete bullshit on this card. But there's some of these fights that after looking into them, talking about them, breaking them down, I actually like quite a bit. And I'm not going to miss a card now, so I'm going to be watching it. May have to get a couple steaks for how many, or cut the steak in half or something, because there are a lot of steak fights throughout this fucking card. But regardless, that's what, 5 disagreements?
That's 5.
That's beautiful. So that's definitely our most for this season so far, and that makes it all the more. That makes it all the more enjoyable. I do think that you'll be in an 0-2 hole to start out, but maybe.
How many underdogs did I get with the 5? Did I get 4?
I think you got 4 out of 5.
Oh man. Okay, come on, Mexico.
and my only underdog was a -105. I'm pretty sure. So not even not hardly.
I'm just looking at this as, you know, we have 40 more events. You know, if I take a 4-1 here, we have 40 more.
Don't concede on here. Don't concede on here. But your fight of the night.
Oh, it has to be the off-brand Justin Gaethje. I'm going to say Polo Reyes. Nelson is a war for 4 minutes, and it's just brilliant to watch. That's what I'm going to predict.
Okay. So I will say my fight of the night. Let me just look through this who's who. I'm gonna say this is always besides the main event, right? Because like obviously like main event is supposed to be what we hope. Paul Craig and Vinicius Moreira.
Oh,
at least a Paul. Even though I picked Paul Craig by decision, I'm gonna hope
fight of the night.
That's gonna be my hope for a performance of the night. My fight of the night: Quinones and Huachin. Why not?
Okay, yeah,
I think
that makes more sense.
I think it'll just be a back and forth. But my hope fight of the night is that Paul Craig gets a performance bonus for some reason.
Head kick knockout. Let's go, Paul Craig.
Yeah, but either way, maybe there'll be some surprises on this card. Thank you all for listening. And if you're watching this card, you're one of us, and we appreciate you. And like any other card, we'll be down in the comments. I'm down to discuss them down there. These are my final answers. I'm not changing any of my picks here. So this week is not going to endure my paranoid, schizophrenic pick style. I'm just going to stick with who I'm picking here and just enjoy the fights. It's going to be a light betting week for me. Get in the comments. This would be the kind of card someone wins the giveaway because it's just one of these who the fuck knows cards. But thank you all for listening. And until next week and the week after that and the week after that, I'm out. Peace.
Just like Aaron said before I sign off, if you're watching this card, you're one of us. You're a hardcore. As always, we appreciate everyone who listens, and we're back next week with a European card, Copenhagen. So yeah, peace out.
Oh yeah, they just got. By the way, before we leave, the Copenhagen card, I believe, just got Gilbert Burns added to it last second, fighting Gunnar Nelson, which is, in my opinion, an even better fight. And that main event of Hermanson and Cannonier also excellent. So I'm really looking forward to that card next week. That again will be an early fight card and the normal fight card for you guys. So starts at 11 a.m. my time, 4 o'clock your time. But all right, I'm out again. Peace.
Peace.